A major unsealing in the Epstein case is coming soon. We're going to go through it and we're going to see what is exactly inside, because the judge released this order and you can see there's a bunch of John or Jane Does on the list, many of them, and we're going to read through some of these and try to piece together what's happening here. But is it going to lead to names like Bill Gates coming out? Are we going to see him involved in this? Or is this going to reveal all the different tentacles of Epstein's disgustingness as it permeated through our federal government and our political class? Maybe not. We're going to see. Let's assemble what's happening here. But remember, this comes over from the case of Giuffre versus Maxwell. The order came out from the judge December 18th, says, look, we're reiterating here what we've already said. We were going to do a review of all of the trial records. Okay, this is the entire case, Giuffre versus Maxwell. And this has been going on for years. Okay, you can see this goes all the way back on page 1 of 8, back to 2020. Right? Now, if you go to the last page on this thing, you're going to see that it goes back even way before that, right? Look at this, all the way back to 2015. The complaint was filed back September 2015 against Ghislaine Maxwell, and it's been going on for years. Okay, so like over 5, 6, 7, 8 years, long time. And as this case has been progressing, a lot of people have come out as witnesses in the case. And so that is what the judge is talking about now. Now that the case is basically done, the judge is saying, I'm going to go back through the logs and see what we can unseal, because a bunch of stuff was sealed while the case was pending. And now we can start to lift the veil of secrecy that was set in place while the case was ultimately pending. And so this is a big filing. It's 51 pages. It's very repetitive. So let me just give you the highlights. And then what we're going to do is go over to Techno Fog, who did a very nice analysis on this. And we're going to see how he summarizes this. And he, of course, is a writer at The Reactionary. I am subscribed to him, but I am not logged in, so we're just going to continue reading today. I would encourage you to follow and subscribe to him on The Reactionary Substack, because he's going to tell us exactly what these Jane Does look like. But let's take a look at the document, because this is what is inside. You see, the case comes from Loretta Preska. She's the district judge out of the Southern District of New York, which is where the case was being heard. And she says the court is reiterating what we've already said. We've already talked about the unsealing process, and we said that we're going to review it and we're going to analyze it, and then I'm going to be the decider about what is unsealed and what is not, pursuant to all of the different docket entries. The following are the court's findings as to the Does, the Jane Does, the John Does, designated following its particularized review of the document. So, as you saw, we had 8 pages of court docket history all the way 2016 up until the present time, and at each page, there's a bunch of entries on there. We got all these docket entries, 253.13, 249.13, blah, 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 all of them. And this is Jane Doe or J Doe 003. We've got these entries, okay? At some time, this happened, and 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 it all involved J Doe 003. And the court finds that that material for those specific entries should be unsealed in full. Okay, so we've already kind of know a little bit about this person. Why? Because it's already been litigated. Like, so it's not going to be a surprise, right? It's already been entered. Like, the prosecutors know who they are. The defense knows who they are. The public just doesn't really know. So the burden, they say, no one has raised any objection to unsealing. So a lot of these are going to be no objections for now. Now, the judge is going to give them an opportunity to raise an objection. So this is currently stayed until next year. But if no one raises an objection, well, then it's just going to be unsealed. Second, this individual also, okay, this person also gave a media interview about his or her work for Epstein to the Daily Mail. And when we were putting together our Ghislaine Maxwell mind map, when we covered this entire trial at depth, we identified a bunch of these people because they identified themselves, right? They had already talked to people and they were already giving media interviews and stuff like that. What they're saying is, even though, yes, it was sealed, like, we already kind of know who this person is, and this person's not even objecting to this, and so those entries will be unsealed. That is showing us that it's not that critical of a privacy interest. In other words, these people are not objecting to even having their information being made public. So we see this is going to be the same pattern as this goes on and on and on, saying this material for another Jane Doe, and this is 004, and this is one of maybe the most disgusting things about this entire document, is as we scroll through this, just count the numbers of people, right? Just count all the J Does. We've got 004, 005, goes to 6, and it just keeps going, my friends. And it goes for 50 pages. J Doe 18, we're at J Doe 23, we're at J Doe 30. Lot of anonymous people. Now, whether these people are, victims or witnesses, other people involved in this, I think is more likely than them being people who are part of Epstein's clients. These are witnesses, these are victims. If these were were people where there was probable cause for criminality, then you would imagine that the Justice Department would already be in possession of those names and they would be prosecuting them, right? And that's not happening right now, as far as we know. And is this going to be something that triggers that? Is this going to be a release of a name that triggers the DOJ to capture this and then start the prosecutions? They say this material should be unsealed in full for JADO 47, saying first, no interests outweigh the presumption here, and this individual name already appears on a publicly available police report, which was released by the Second Circuit. Also, this individual, look, appears to be a member of law enforcement, specifically a detective. So what is that about? Doesn't sound like a client of Epstein's. Maybe it is. Finally, the only document that discusses this individual is already on the public docket with the individual's name redacted. So my point is, is Bill Gates going to be in this list? Like, is his name going to show up on this list? This person, Doe number 57, is an alleged victim of the abuse who has not spoken publicly and has maintained her privacy. As such, interest does not outweigh the privacy interests of the alleged victim. And so this is going to still continue to be sealed. But this is just a victim, right? It's not an actual client. Doe's 58 name and identifying information, that name shall remain sealed. She's a classic outsider. She's peripheral to the events. She's neither a victim nor associated with Epstein or Maxwell. Any references has no apparent role to the ruling, and so that one is also going to be sealed. This material for 59 should be unsealed in full. She's dead, but her name was unsealed in materials already, but she's dead now. So, of course, they'll unseal that one. Joe 61, same thing here. This individual, the sealed material is not salacious. It's primarily just disclosure stuff. This material should also be unsealed. First, this individual didn't object to unsealing it at all. And second, this individual's allegations against Epstein have already been previously reported. Okay, so it's someone who is against Epstein. It's not an Epstein ally. So it doesn't sound like there's that much interesting stuff in here. It says this material should be unsealed in full. First, no interest here. Second, this individual's association with Epstein has already been widely reported in the media. Womp womp. Look, all these JADOs just keeps going. We're just at page 23. Just keeps going and going and going. A lot of names in here. Let's see what else we got. Here, 110. This individual did not raise any objection, so they don't care about that. We see, as we keep going, 122. Here, this individual's name has been widely publicized by the media. Okay. Already been named in public lawsuits for 122. Same thing here. This one is going to stay sealed. 124 will remain sealed. Doe 124 is another classic outsider. She's neither a victim nor associated with Epstein or Maxwell, and so that can all remain sealed. This one's going to be unsealed. Already widely reported in the media. My point is, are we going to get anything new? Are we going to see anything? This person's deposition is already publicly available as well. And so that was already unsealed by the Second Circuit. Here's the story, right? It just keeps going and going and going. And the judge finally concludes. She says, look, the court now stays its order for 14 days. So we're going to be unleashing all this stuff. But if anybody wants to object to this or appeal this order, you can do that. We're asked to confer, prepare the documents, and then post them on the docket. Otherwise, what we've already sealed in the middle of this is now coming out. So that was signed by Loretta A. Preska, and Preska is the senior United States District Court judge who is authorizing that. And so a lot of people very excited thinking that we're going to have Bill Gates' name in there. That's just because this comes from this simple case. And there's a lot more to this. This is a civil case, right? This is Virginia Giuffre suing Ghislaine Maxwell for damages and winning. But it was not the federal government, right, investigating Epstein's crimes and then releasing evidence that they have in their possession. They're just saying that stuff that's already been transacted in this trial is now going to be unsealed. So it is interesting. Like, it's actually, I'm curious. We've been following this case for years now, but is it going to lead to any real revelations? We'll see. I'm not holding my breath on it. This is the judge who is the one who ordered it. Very nice looking office, American flags all over the place. I love that. Love that. Her name is Loretta Preska, and she issued a nice ruling that we're excited about. We also know, though, that our friend at Techno Fog, he says, there's difficulty reporting on this because a lot of it is in the authorities' possession and they haven't revealed it. Now, the Daily Mail came out and they said there's a bunch of information that's coming out. They said over there that they're going to name Epstein's friends, recruiters, and victims within the coming weeks. But he says, that's not really accurate, unfortunately. He says to explain what's really going on, it's the civil case, and there were a bunch of people listed in the civil case. And he says, here is what we really got. There are approximately 100 John Does who were previously identified. Some had already been interviewed by the media. The names of others, including victims, were discussed in the criminal trial, not the civil one. 67 people are going to be unidentified, 33 of the unknown John Does. The sealed materials relating to them is not salacious. In the case of John Doe 88, the only reference was a question which he denied knowledge of the individuals. 6 JDs, John Does, Does are victims and are not going to be released. 6 of the unidentified John Does were identified as either victim affiliates with connections to victims, so their names and materials concerning them will be released. We also have a number of Epstein affiliates or former Epstein employees, but records indicate but do not guarantee that the majority of these do not include salacious information, obviously. So the name and materials concerning John Doe number 29, a former Epstein employee, is going to be unsealed. That'll be interesting. And the judge describes them, though, as a staff member possibly present at a time and place. Might be an Epstein employee who was theorized by a witness to be present in a home, but otherwise, it's just not that much stuff. Okay, so great analysis here from Techno Fog, but as he says, right, it's not that salacious. Now, we do have some salacious comments from Tim Burchett. He's a congressman. He says, you know, that we need to release the flight logs of this, not just the transcripts or the records from the court proceedings. We want to know what the government knows and what is being held under lock and key. Now, why isn't this stuff being released? Tim says is because it's compromising.
And too many of my colleagues, I'm afraid, are compromised in this area for whatever reason. Somebody just whispered in their ear, said, hey, you don't want something to come out on something else. You better keep your mouth shut on this. And that's exactly what they've done. And it continues to go, whether it's the honeypot that the Russians used to use or something worse. I don't know. But clearly you see that up and down the line. You see good conservatives vote for liberal policies and too many.
Because they're going to blackmail them, like they're all on the airplane and they're afraid that they're going to get hit over it. That doesn't sound good. Vivek says, as he's running for president, we need to expose the Epstein client list. The federal government has it. I'll release it as the next U.S. president. We're fighting corruption and no one will be spared. And so we'd like to see that list. Of course, Ghislaine Maxwell got convicted of this, and it was strange that she was the only one. No one else got prosecuted. Everybody else who used Epstein's services is still running around the country, hanging out, doing whatever it is they do. But we have questions about this. So does Senator Ted Cruz. He wants to know why the Democrats will not allow the Republicans to subpoena the flight log records. Why are the Democrats covering up for Giuffre Epstein?
Yesterday, I played the video and said, yes, you were there. You're the one. It was my colleague, Marsha Blackburn. She introduced an amendment that I joined that would have subpoenaed the flight logs and said, we need to see who was on that plane. If there are prominent politicians who were involved in molesting young girls, we need to know. Don't protect them. And I got to say, the Democrats are freaking out. He literally blocked all amendments. And in my view, Republicans on the Judiciary Committee, we ought to keep pushing to say we're going to vote on the record. If you are covering up for someone who is engaged in molesting children, we're going to expose it. And I will say, Sean, do you know what painting Giuffre Epstein had hanging in his living room in Manhattan?
Bill Clinton.
I don't.
And George Bush.
He had, it's really horrible. He had a painting of Bill Clinton
dressed as Monica
in a blue dress, wearing red pumps, high heels, hanging on his wall. It's traumatizing. If you Google it, you're going to hate the image. That's what Epstein had on his wall. Maybe that explains why Dick Durbin and the Democrats don't want to subpoena those flight logs. They're not going to like what they find in them.
Yeah, so that's probably true. I think that there is a massive cover-up of this. Obviously, Ghislaine Maxwell was a monster, but she was not the only monster. There's a lot of other people, but they just like to put a bow on this thing, stick it on her, tell us Giuffre Epstein's dead, and then watch the whole thing snake away. Now, we'll be here to continue to cover it, my friends. Thank you for subscribing and joining us as we do.